They entered the courtroom together as a family. But within minutes, their cracks were laid bare for the entire world to witness. This was not merely a court fight, it was the disentangling of years of deceit, betrayal, and shattered promises. And by the time the judge slammed down her gavel, no one in that room would be leaving any less changed. If you've ever wondered what really happens when family drama turns into a courtroom war, stay with me until the end of this story, and tell me in the comments what side you'd be on. The room is tense. Heavy oak benches press against the backs of nervous supporters, and the smell of polished wood mixes with the faint scent of coffee clinging to the air. Kody Brown slumps rigidly at the defense table, his jaw clenched, his eyes jumping from wife to wife. To his left, Robin is leaning forward, her fingers curled around the edge of the table as if she's holding on for a hurricane. Christine, across from them, refuses to even look at them, her hands folded on the table. Janelle sits back of her impassive while Mary, her lips compressed, exhibits a mixture of pain and defiance. The case? Charges of financial fraud, custody battles, and emotional abuse. But beneath the legalese, all the players in this courtroom recognize what it's all about: trust, loyalty, and a lot of scars that still haven't healed. The judge, a woman with sharp glasses riding the bridge of her nose, rings the session open. Her voice cuts through the air like a knife. This court is now in session. The case of Brown versus Brown. First witness is called. Christine rises, her steps slow but deliberate. As she takes the stand, the silence is thick enough to choke on. She swears in, then looks directly at Kody, her voice trembling but clear. "I gave decades of my life to this family," she starts. "I gave up dreams, autonomy, and even happiness because I believed in us. But while I was raising children and keeping everything together, Kody, you were keeping secrets. Money. Decisions. And worst of all, the truth about how you felt about us." Gasps course through the courtroom. Robin shifts awkwardly, her face blushing crimson. Kody inhales sharply, shaking his head, whispering to his attorney. But Christine does not desist. She describes images of sleepless nights alone, of hidden files of financial records behind locked drawers, of hushed tones she was never supposed to overhear. Her words are laced with anguish, but beneath them lies steel, a woman who has long made up her mind to no longer remain silent. She gets closer to the microphone. "I discovered he had a future with one of us only. And it wasn't me. Never me." The room explodes. Whispers run across the gallery, the judge strikes her gavel for silence, and Kody pounds his hand on the table. Robin's eyes bulge, her mouth opening in horror, but no sound passes her lips. Christine brushes a tear from her face, taking a moment to collect herself. The judge insists on silence, but tension in the room has changed. Now, suddenly, this is no longer just about legal issues. It's about betrayal on the deepest, most intimate level. Kody stands up. His attorney reaches out to grab his sleeve, trying to get him to sit back down, but he resists. His voice shakes the courtroom, rough with rage and desperation. "You don't get it. You all don't get what I was doing. I was keeping this family safe." The judge glares. "Mr. Brown, sit down or you'll be held in contempt." But Kody pushes on, his finger jutting out at Christine. "You think you're the victim? You all turned your backs on me before I ever made those decisions." His words linger, thick and toxic. The wives shift uncomfortably in their chairs, some in rage, some in shock. The audience behind them grows noisier, the tension balancing on the brink of anarchy. Mary stands up from the back row, her face white, her hands shaking. She has been quiet, remote, resigned for years. But today, in front of the world, she rises. "I need to speak," she says, her voice shaking but getting stronger with every sentence. The judge raises an eyebrow but lets her come up to the stand. Mary doesn't even look at Kody as she starts. "Christine isn't the only one who found things she wasn't supposed to. I've read papers, had conversations, proof, and I can show that this wasn't about family decisions alone. This was planned. It was done." Courtroom grows cold. Everyone leans forward, eager to hear what she has to say. Even Kody appears shaken for the first time, his face growing pale. Mary's words hang heavy in the courtroom, her voice trembling but laced with a courage that seems foreign even to herself. She takes a slow breath, her eyes never meeting Kody's, as if the weight of what she's about to reveal could shatter the fragile walls holding this family together. I found records, she continues, her voice tightening, bank transfers, property titles, documents signed without our knowledge. And they all point to one individual. Kody. The room breathes collectively, whispers spreading like flames, the hum filling the paneled room. The judge pounds her gavel, silencing them, but even she cannot suppress the flash of interest in her piercing gaze. Kody's face flushes, veins throbbing at his temples, and Robin bends forward, whispering angrily at him, her lips compressed, her hands quivering. Christine straightens, however, her previous vulnerability overcome by a combination of affirmation and vindication. Janelle sits in stunned silence, her fists clenched around the edge of her seat as if she is pinning herself down. The audience of family supporters and silent witnesses lean in, desperate not to miss a word. The judge waves Mary along, and Mary is swallowing hard, jaw set. He directed money, she states flatly, into accounts only in Robin's name. He was providing for her future at our expense. The words splash like a rock tossed into a quiet pond, waves of betrayal widening by the second. Robin's eyes fill with tears, and she shakes her head in disbelief, her voice cracking as she finally speaks. That's not true. He did it for all of us, you're twisting everything. But even as she defends him, her voice falters because deep down she knows the truth has sharp edges she can't dull. Christine bursts out, her voice raw, unfiltered, the years of silence cracking open. No, Robin. He cheated us, and you knew it. You sat back and let us struggle while you gained the rewards. Robin gasps, hand flying to her chest as if she's been punched, lips opening in shock, but no words emerge. The judge orders the gallery again, warning he will have them cleared, but his tone is not of any actual authority against the sea of feelings surging in the courtroom. Kody, at last finding his voice, stands sharply, his chair scraping across the floor. This is not what it looks like, he yells, his neck veins swelling. I did all I did to hold on to what we had. To save this family alive. He slams his fist down on the table, the ring echoing finality. But the judge bangs her gavel once more, her voice like iron. Sit down, Mr. Brown. This is not your time to testify. His lawyer pulls at his sleeve, begging him to remain silent, but Kody's rage is unstoppable. He glowers at Christine, at Mary, at anyone who is brave enough to look at him critically. But beneath that fury, a shadow of fear crosses his face. Fear that the truth is no longer in his grasp. Prosecution pounces on the moment. The lawyer, a quick woman with a serene yet incisive demeanor, stands up from her chair and speaks directly to Mary. Mrs. Brown, are you ready to introduce this evidence in the courtroom? Mary nods, her trembling hand holding up a thick folder, edges worn from hours of sleepless nights leafing through its pages. She hands it to the bailiff, who hands it to the judge. Courtroom is silent, only interrupted by shuffling papers as the judge glances through the documents. Her brow knots, her mouth compresses into a tight line. She finally glances up, her eyes pinching towards Kody. Mr. Brown, these records are seriously troubling. They indicate intentional misrepresentation of mutual assets. Crowd gasps once more, and Kody's attorney stands, objecting vehemently, claiming that the evidence is circumstantial, that the papers could be misread. But the judge cuts him off with an acerbic look. There will be your turn to answer, she states steadfastly. The camera of the imagination sweeps to the wives, their faces a study in contrasts. Christine's fury seethes like fire about to burn. Janelle's stoicism fractures, a flicker of pain showing for once through her normally placid facade. Robin's tears freely flow, guilt blending with incredulity. And Mary, though shaking, stands higher than she has in years, her voice discovering a depth that it never possessed. Undefined. "We trusted you, Kody," she says, the words softly but full of venom, "and you built a future that didn't include us." Prosecution presents a new witness, a financial counselor who used to work very closely with the family. The man, late 40s and tired-eyed in a conservative suit, approaches the stand. His voice is calm, professional, but each word he utters is another thud for Kody's faltering defense. "Yes, I serviced several accounts for the Browns," he starts. "And yes, I was also told to divert money into private investments in the name of Mrs. Robin Brown." Gasps run again. Robin covers her face in her hands, crying hysterically now. "But," the man goes on, looking at Kody, "when I expressed concerns about equality to the other wives, Mr. Brown informed me, and I quote, 'They don't need to know. They're not included in the plan.'" The words cut through the courtroom like a knife, and even the judge sits back, shocked at the audacity. Christine clamps her hand over her mouth, afraid she's going to cry. Janelle shakes her head in shock. Mary blinks blankly, her courage faltering beneath betrayal. Kody bangs his hand on the rail a second time, his attorney yelling objections, but it's done. The words hang in the air, unremovable. Robin leaps up, her face smeared with tears, her voice cracking into a scream. "Tell them it's not true, Kody. Tell them." But Kody's silent. His silence yells louder than words ever could. The judge, getting the situation back under control, calls for a recess. Courtroom descends into anarchy as the gavel bashes over and over, but the tension is beyond control. People yell, cameras pop, whispers mushroom into howls. Side reporters rush to get the scoop, microphones thrust in all directions, the hysteria feeding off every ounce of scandal unveiled within. The wives meet apart inside the courtroom, even in their mutual agony divided. Christine exerts herself sternly to Janelle, face burning with rage. "We can't allow him to get away with this. He must pay for what he's done." Janelle, her voice so much softer, more exhausted, answers, "But if this ruins everything we built, what's left for our children?" Christine shudders, tears welling. What's left? At least the truth. In the meantime, Robin holds on to Kody, her body shaking. "They're turning against us. You said it would never come to this." Kody, his eyes wild, speaks under his breath. "I can fix this. I can still fix this." But his words lack substance, as if a man trying to persuade himself of a falsehood he no longer believes. As recess comes to an end and everyone trickles back into the courtroom, the judge indicates that the trial will continue with cross-examination. Kody's attorney, in an effort to take control back, starts pounding the financial advisor with questions, attempting to discredit his testimony. But the man does not flinch, each response slicing deeper into the pretense. The audience is with bated breath, the tension intolerable. Christine, Mary, and Janelle share glances, not of togetherness but of common hurts too deep to conceal. Robin looks away altogether, trapped in her own tempest. The lawyer leans in, her voice sharp. "Mr. Brown, is that accurate that Kody Brown informed you he planned to legally divorce his other wives once the financial shift was made?" The advisor pauses a beat, the silence unbearable. Then he nods. "Yes, that was the plan." Gasps, screams, weeping, it's a burst of shock and sorrow all mixed together. Christine weeps openly now, her noise raw and animal-like. Janelle lowers her head, silent tears streaming down. Mary clutches the edge of her seat, her knuckles white. Robin covers her ears, shaking her head, as if denial could be a bulwark from the reality. And Kody, he sits there rigid, his complexion ashen, his lips shaking, trapped in the ruin of his own creation. The judge grapples with regaining order, her gavel pounding down repeatedly, her voice raised but almost lost to the bedlam. She finally announces another adjournment for the next day, her voice crisp, her restraint frayed. Courtroom empties slowly, chaos spilling into the hallways and out into the world. Reporters chase the wives, microphones catching fragments of raw emotion, Christine's fury, Janelle's heartbreak, Mary's hollow voice, Robin's sobs. Kody storms past them all, flanked by his lawyer, his face twisted in rage and fear. In here, the ringing of the judge's gavel continues to echo, a reminder that the trial has just started. And despite the passing of the day, the war within this family has only raged on to something that none of them can turn away from. The world holds its breath for the next thing, starved for the truth, thirsty for the next to be revealed. The following morning, the courtroom is fuller than ever before, air thick with expectation, reporters elbowing each other out of the way, the buzz growing like a storm on the verge of bursting, and when finally the judge appears, the room drops into an electric silence charged with tension. Kody's sitting at the defense table, his face chalky, his eyes empty, the weight of the day before's revelations crushing him down, and beside him Robin holds a tissue tightly in her hands, muttering frantic whispers he hardly appears to hear, and across the room Christine, Janelle, and Mary sit shoulder by shoulder, but their faces could not be more different. Christine seethes with rage, Janelle shattered, and Mary sits blankly ahead, her body tense, as if preparing herself for the inevitable shattering of whatever small pieces of family are left. The judge does not hesitate, her voice cool as she brings the session into order and insists the prosecution proceed. And the attorney stands easily, her voice cool but biting as she calls for a new witness, this time a surprise one, a witness whose testimony could single-handedly ruin what little credibility Kody has left, one of his older children. A murmur runs through the courtroom, whispers going like wildfire, and out step a young woman when the doors creak open, her face white but firm, Aspen, Christine's daughter, whose very presence causes shockwaves among the wives and Kody himself, his lips opening as if to form words but nothing exiting them, his hand shaking slightly as he clutches the table's edge. Aspen steps up, is sworn in, and for a brief moment the room hangs silent, all leaning forward, anticipating what she will say. Her voice shudders initially but acquires strength rapidly, the sincerity in what she says unshakable. "I was raised in this family," she starts, her glance flashing over Kody briefly before fastening back on the lawyer. "I noticed the way things were apportioned, the way some of us were made to feel less significant, less loved. And along the way, I figured out it wasn't an accident. It was by design." There are gasps throughout the gallery, and Christine grips her hands tightly together, tears welling as she listens to her daughter tell truths she herself had borne in silence all these years. Aspen speaks on, her tone measured, her voice trembling with feeling. "I remember times when my mom couldn't get groceries for us, and when we went to Dad and asked him for assistance, he said to be patient, things will improve. But I also saw gifts being brought to Robin's children, high-ticket items we never got. I saw him at their soccer matches, their school productions, while the rest of us waited for the leavings of his attention." Christine drops her head, quiet tears streaming down her face. Janelle clings to the armrest of her chair so hard that her knuckles become white, and Mary, although in control, bites her lip until it is almost bleeding, her silence more forceful than any loud words. Robin's face crumples as she hears Aspen's words, her tears flowing uncontrollably now, but still she shakes her head, mouthing, "It's not true," though even she knows the evidence is damning. Kody shifts uncomfortably, his jaw tightening, his eyes flashing with anger, but he doesn't dare interrupt. The attorney leans in closer to Aspen. "Did your father ever discuss future plans with you? Did he ever give any indications that he wanted to leave the rest of the family behind?" Aspen pauses, her gaze darting to Kody, the silence dragging on interminably before she finally nods, her voice shaking. "Yes. He once told me in secret that this way of life was a burden, that he was only staying for show. He promised one day he would be free, and when he promised it, he was only glancing at Robin." The words are a bolt of lightning, the air electric with tension, the wives' faces white with shock, Christine sobbing interrupting into loud cries, Mary covering her mouth to muffle a gasp, Janelle shaking her head in shock, and Robin grabbing her chest, whispering, "No, no, no," under her breath as Kody finally explodes, his fist coming down on the table. "Lies," Kody bellowed, his voice ringing out in the chamber, the judge yelling at him to sit, but he's beyond himself with fury, his words spilling out wildly. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're a child, you don't know the sacrifices I made. I supported this family on my back while all of you complained and griped." His attorney yanks frantically at his sleeve, urging him to remain quiet, but Kody's anger only intensifies, his face flushing, his throat constricted. The judge bangs her gavel, risking contempt, and at last he subsides into his seat, gasping for air, eyes blazing with unhinged desperation. Aspen shivers on the witness stand, her hands wrapping in her lap, but her determination remains unshakable. "I might be your daughter," she tells him, her voice breaking, "but I am not blind, and I won't be quiet any longer." The room erupts in whispers once more, and Christine dashes towards her daughter, sobbing, telling her how proud she is, that she's courageous, as Kody covers his face with his hands, his mask cracking bit by bit. Prosecution holds its breath and the defense stands, fighting hard to recover ground. Kody's attorney starts questioning Aspen, implying her memories are tainted by her mother's bitterness, that she is emotionally biased in her evidence. But Aspen's responses, though shaking, are solid, her determination firm. "This isn't about bitterness," she asserts. "Truth this is about." The attorney hesitates, his arguments fracturing against her honesty, and finally, with no questions to ask, Aspen resigns, the shadow of her testimony hanging like a specter over each corner of the room. Undefined, the judge declares a short recess, the room humming like a hive of pandemonium, reporters dashing to call in their reports, the wives shrinking into their corners, each struggling with their own war. Christine hugs Aspen tightly, telling her how much she loves her, how she is so proud of her, while Janelle walks back and forth, her face white and pinched, talking about what this means for their future, for their kids. Undefined Mary stands silently in the background, her face expressionless, though her eyes are bright with unshed tears. Robin falls into a chair, crying hard, and Kody hurries off into a side room with his attorney, his voice loud, ringing down the hallway. When court convenes again, the prosecution announces they have further evidence, audio recordings, phone calls made at midnight recorded without Kody's awareness, his own words against him. The judge permits them to be played, and as a hush settles in the room, the recording plays. Kody's weary but incisive voice rings out in the courtroom, admitting on the phone to someone in hushed tones. "I can't keep doing this," the recording repeats. Christine's never content, Janelle's too independent, and Mary, she's gone in all the ways that count. "The only one I can rely on is Robin. After this is over, it'll be just her and me. That's the future I want." An audible gasp sweeps across the room, Christine gripping her chest as if pierced, Janelle holding her mouth open in horror, Mary turning away, tears streaming down her face for the first time in years. Robin weeps harder, caught between loyalty and guilt, and Kody remains paralyzed, his face white as paper, his jaw open, incapable of denying what the whole room has now heard. The judge stops the tape, her voice controlled but biting. "Mr. Brown, this tape is damning. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Kody stutters, words deserting him, his lawyer attempting objections, but the damage is done. The wives sit in tears, their hearts broken, their trust destroyed. Christine weeps openly, her whole body shaking, her sobbing ringing out through the hushed courtroom. Janelle finally cracks, her stoic facade shattering as she whispers, "All these years wasted." Mary, normally so reserved, breathes in a raw whisper, "I was nothing to you. All this time, nothing." Robin, grasping her chest, turns to Kody, her face frozen in shock and betrayal. "You said it would be different," she whimpers, her voice shaking. "You said we would be safe. But you lied to me too." Kody attempts to reach for her, but she pulls back, her body racked with sobs, her faith broken even as he attempts to save it. The judge demands an adjournment, her voice stern, her patience thin to a thread. As the courtroom clears, the air is charged, a whirlwind of heartache, betrayal, and incredulity. On the sidewalk outside, cameras flash, journalists yell, the world grabbing at every morsel of scandal. Within, the family breaks apart, the ties that bound them frayed by deceptions too profound to mend. And with the doors closing, one thing is certain: this is no longer merely a legal dispute, it is the total and public annihilation of a family that once professed unity above everything else. The next day opens with a gray sky looming low over the courthouse, rain streaming down the high windows as if the heavens themselves are weeping over what's going down inside, and when the families arrive, the air is already thick with foreboding, the gallery full of reporters, supporters, and quiet observers who can't look away from the drama of a family coming apart before their very eyes, the tension so thick it's almost palpable. Kody arrives first, his former confident gait now stiff and fatigued, his eyes shadowed, his suit crumpled as if he hasn't slept in days, Robin behind him with puffy eyes and shaking hands, while on the other side of the aisle Christine appears with Aspen by her side, Janelle close behind, their faces deathly pale but set in grim determination, and Mary bringing up the rear, moving slowly, deliberately, as if every step is weighed down by years of hurt and silence. The judge sits, her eyes sharper than at any time before, her patience quite obviously at an end, and without ado she instructs the prosecution to get on with their case, and the attorney stands, her voice cool but with an undercurrent of steel, to declare that this day's witness is one quite unexpected, someone within Kody's innermost circle who has emerged with knowledge that may change everything. The doors do creak open, and in comes a man with a salt and pepper head of hair, tidily attired in a navy blue suit, his eyes bearing the lines of years but also a spark of fervor. It is an old business partner of Kody's, a man who had been his partner in matters both financial and personal, and his presence triggers a palpable shock through Kody, who stiffens in his chair, his lips open in horror as he mutters under his breath, "No, not him." The man takes the stand, is sworn in, and commences his testimony with a calm but unyielding voice. "I worked with Mr. Brown for more than a decade," he adds, his gaze darting fleetingly toward Kody. "I was there when he established accounts, when he signed contracts, when he made decisions that impacted not only his finances but his family's destiny. And I can say this to you, he never once intended for all of his wives to have an equal share in what was constructed." The words crack like thunder, Christine's eyes going wide as new tears stream down her face, Janelle shaking her head in disbelief, Mary grasping the arm of her chair, her knuckles white, while Robin gives a choked cry and folds in on herself as if she's attempting to become invisible. The associate continues, his testimony graphic and condemning. "Kody said to me specifically that the only wife he felt comfortable leaving the future to was Robin. That the others were disposable. He used the word disposable." A ripple of gasps runs through the gallery, the sound like a cresting wave against rock, and even the judge's gaze flashes with shock at the barbarity of the word. Christine explodes, unable to keep herself in check, her rage-filled voice quivering with anger. "Disposable? After all that we gave up, after all that we lost, you called us disposable?" Her voice breaks, the aching hurt saturating the courtroom, and while the judge counsels her to remain silent, even she doesn't push too hard, seeing the human emotion behind the explosion. Kody sits rigid, his colorless face, his fists clenched around the table so tightly his knuckles glitter, his jaw quivering as if he is between being furious and falling apart, but his muteness says more about him than any lies ever could. Robin openly cries, shaking her head, repeating, I didn't know," again and again, though no one appears to notice. Janelle leans in close, her voice barely audible. "We weren't wives to him. We were pawns. Pieces on a board he thought he could rearrange at will." The prosecutor continues to question the associate, inquiring into money matters, and he discloses more appalling information. Properties transferred to shell corporations, money concealed under Robin's name, investments made into hidden accounts. "It wasn't mismanagement," he asserts categorically. "It was strategy." He needed to make sure that when the dust had settled, Robin would be the only one left standing with him. Christine covers her face with her hands, crying softly, Aspen stroking her shoulder for reassurance, Janelle standing staring off in the distance, her eyes blank with shock, her whole world disintegrating piece by piece. Mary finally breaks her silence, her voice low, flat, empty. "Those years I pleaded for crumbs of notice, those years I struggled to remain when I should have gone, and all the time he schemed this. He schemed to eliminate us." Her words dangle heavily, a knife in the air, and Kody at last loses it, his chair squeaking as he springs from his seat. "That isn't so," he yells, his voice breaking. "You don't know how hard it was to keep this family together. You don't know the sacrifices that I made. I did what I had to do." The judge bangs his gavel, telling him to sit down, but his anger only adds fuel to the flames of guilt and desperation already swirling around him like vultures. The prosecution are far from done. They present another item of evidence, letters written by Kody that were discovered during discovery. The bailiff brings them to the judge, who leafs through the pages before nodding firmly and returning them. The lawyer reads out, "To my future self, one day it will be just you and Robin. The others will leave or they'll be forced out. And when that happens, you'll finally be free." Courtroom gasps, the words echoing like a death knell through the chamber, Christine crying harder now, Janelle shaking her head in disbelief, Mary finally breaking into sobs she can no longer suppress, and Robin staring at Kody with a look of horror, her tears mixing with betrayal. "You wrote that," she whispers, her voice trembling. "You swore to me we were doing this together. You never mentioned it would be built on top of what we destroyed everyone else for." Kody grasps for her, his voice pleading. "Robin, please, you know I did this for us, for our future." But Robin shudders, her frame shaking as she brushes his hand aside, her sobs racking now, her loyalty weakening under the suffocating pressure of reality. The judge orders a recess, the gavel thudding over the bedlam, but even as the courtroom drains, the air is heavy with destruction. Journalists dash to their phones, the corridor outside a blur of camera flashes and shouted queries, the news spreading like fire. Inside, the wives all sit in small clusters, Christine and Janelle huddled together, Mary sitting off to herself but silently sobbing, and Robin, now separated from Kody, sitting with her face hidden in her hands. Kody and his attorney storm out, his face contorted with anger, speaking furiously of betrayal, of everyone turning against him, but his voice has the hollow sound of a man losing himself. When they get back, the defense in a final effort tries to discredit the witness, saying he has revenge motives, that he is exaggerating, but his responses are consistent, calm, unshakable, and the damage is already done. The wives shun Kody's eyes, their hearts broken, their trust destroyed. At the end of the day, the judge recesses with a stern warning that tomorrow will see even more evidence produced, and that the court is requiring absolute order thereafter. But the damage has already been etched into the pages of this family's history. Undefined Christine departs with Aspen by her side, both having tears but both determined, Janelle plodding slowly behind, head down. Mary pauses for a moment, her gaze darting to Kody but does not speak, her silence more condemnation than any words could possibly hold. Undefined Robin walks by herself, her crying resounding in the hallway, and Kody, flanked by cameras and microphones, rages about misunderstanding, about deception and betrayal, his words frantic, his image disintegrating for all to witness. And as the courthouse doors shut behind them with a slam, one thing is certain. The next session won't merely try their patience or their loyalty or their love. Undefined, it'll try their very survival. The rain has not let up by the time session 5 starts, and as the courthouse fills again, the storm raging outside appears to be mirroring the storm raging inside these walls for days. The incessant rain pounding on the windows as if the heavens themselves are slamming their fists in judgment, and when the families arrive in the courtroom, the atmosphere is thicker than ever before, Kody stiff and white, marching in with his shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world itself is bearing down on him, his eyes flicking to Robin, who trails several paces behind, her face smeared with fatigue, her movements uncertain as if she's not sure she still has a place at his side. And across from them Christine appears first, her chin set high even as the redness around her eyes tells another story, her daughter Aspen following close on her heels, Janelle next with the tranquil look of a woman who's broken so many times she knows how to put the pieces together in silence, and Mary last of all, her pace slow, measured, her silence more cutting than any words could be, and when the judge finally enters and the gavel comes down, the gallery quiets, the air heavy with anticipation, because everyone knows today, finally, the defense will be compelled to answer the mountain of incriminating evidence heaped against Kody, and everyone wants to know if he has anything left to stave off the tidal wave engulfing his name. The defense had its attorney stand, her tone abrupt, professional, but underlying it is a desperation she can't quite conceal as she begins to cross-examine the once business partner who destroyed Kody's credibility yesterday, her voice low and measured. "Sir, isn't it true that you and Mr. Brown disagreed on a failed investment almost 3 years ago?" The witness nods in agreement and the lawyer pounces, pushing harder. "And isn't it true, too, that you lost money because of that argument? So you have a reason to hate Mr. Brown, don't you?" The man hesitates, his eyes glinting more tightly, but his voice does not waver. "I have no reason to hate him, counselor. I have come to speak the truth and not to settle scores. My losses are nothing compared to the losses his wives experienced when he schemed to erase them." Courtroom murmurs, the lawyer stumbling a little, but she continues, attempting to discredit, implying embellishments, bias, manipulation, but whenever she attempts to dig a hole under him, the witness responds with cool accuracy, centering his credibility, and with each failed effort, the defense appears weaker, more desperate. Kody shifts uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw clamped tightly shut, his fingers drumming a nervous beat on the table, his eyes flicking from the witness to the judge to the wives across the aisle, and for the first time, he appears no longer like the controlling patriarch but like a man staring down the ruin of his neatly built life. But then, in a sudden twist, the defense calls Robin to the stand and the gallery erupts in whispers, reporters scribbling frantically as she makes her way forward, her face pale, her eyes glistening with tears, her body trembling as though she's caught between two unbearable choices, and when she raises her hand to swear in, her voice cracks, her words nearly swallowed by the weight of the moment. "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." She sits down, her hands gripping the edges of the chair, and the defense attorney begins softly, almost tenderly. "Robin, you've been accused of being the chosen one, of benefiting unfairly from Kody's actions. Can you explain to us, in your own words, what your role actually was?" Robin gulps, looking at Kody, whose eyes plead with her for her allegiance, and then at Christine and Janelle, whose faces seethe with anger, and finally at Mary, whose empty gaze appears to bore into her very being. Her voice shakes as she starts out. "I didn't ask for any of this. I loved Kody, I trusted him. I thought we were constructing something as a team. I didn't know. I didn't know he was pulling things over on the others behind their backs. I never wanted them to get hurt." Christine snorts a bitter laugh, shaking her head, muttering to Janelle, "She didn't know? She always knew." And while the judge cuts her off, the feeling remains, unvoiced but palpable. The defense lawyer pushes on, encouraging Robin to position herself as a victim, pointing to her lack of knowledge regarding the financial manipulation, the favoritism, the letters penned by Kody, but under cross-examination, the prosecution shatters her well-crafted armor, their questions biting and relentless. "Robin, did you ever question Kody why properties were being signed in your name? Did you ever wonder why accounts were opened in your name? Did you ever once inform the other wives of these arrangements?" Robin stutters, her tears running freely, her responses contradictory, her voice breaking as she confesses, I trusted him. I believed he was safeguarding us. I thought he was keeping me safe." The words hang suspended in the air, accusatory in themselves because they betray complicity not in intent but in withholding, and Christine's eyes blaze with anger, her voice cracking as she whispers, rough and low, "You let him keep you safe and he killed us." Kody leans over, his hand wrapped around the tabletop, his lips in hasty whispers as if he's coaching Robin along, but the jury is watching it, the judge is watching it, and the prosecution pounces on it. "Mrs. Brown, are you responding to these questions for yourself, or are you saying his words?" The room is frozen, the question cutting through tension like a knife, and Robin gasps, glancing at Kody and then the prosecutor, conflicted, vulnerable, her body shaking so hard she's having trouble breathing, and for the first time she doesn't defend him. She weeps into her hands, barely audible. "I don't know anymore." Gasp ripples through the gallery, Kody pounding his hand on the table, yelling, "Leave her alone! She's the one who should be standing trial, I am." His voice rings out, raw, desperate, and for an instant the facade of control falters completely, and the man behind it is laid bare, angry, afraid, undone. The judge thunders the gavel angrily, calling for order, but it is too late, for the jury has witnessed what no cross-examination ever could: his fear. The hearing wears on, witness after witness drawing a portrait not of a family but of a war zone in which trust was the initial casualty. Christine remembering the years of manipulation, her voice shaking but acid when she talks of the night she wept alone while Kody lost himself. Janelle softly and fiercely talking of fiscal commitments never fulfilled, hopes kidnapped in the name of family cohesion, and Mary, at last, after all the silence, testifying, her voice empty but unflinching as she speaks the words, "I stayed because I believed in something that didn't exist. I remained because I believed love could be reconstructed. But love founded on deception is dead already." The room drops into whispered quiet, the weight of her words upon them, and for once Kody appears truly shattered, his head in his hands clasped together, as if even he cannot any more deny the cemetery of trust that he tore down. The defense attempts to rally, calling in character witnesses, neighbors, distant family members, individuals who testify to the fact that Kody once attempted to keep his family intact, that he once loved all his wives, but against the mountain of betrayal and proof, their words ring hollow, thin, a faint echo against the stormy roars of truth. The judge finally adjourns, her eyes tired, her voice biting as she warns both sides that tomorrow will break into final testimonies, and the jury will have to start weighing not only evidence but the intent and the harm behind it. As the families file out, reporters swarm, microphones shoved in faces, cameras flashing like lightning, Christine refusing to answer, Janelle offering only a quiet "no comment," Mary brushing past in silence, and Robin breaking down on the steps, crying into her hands as the world watches, while Kody shouts over the noise, "This isn't the end! You'll see, I was only trying to protect my family." But his words sound hollow now, drowned out by the storm outside, the thunder rolling like judgment, the rain pouring like tears. Inside the courthouse, the empty seats echo with the ghosts of love and trust that once filled this family. And as night falls, the question lingers in the minds of everyone who's witnessed this tragedy. What will be left when the verdict finally comes? The storm outside had at last blown itself out by Session 6 morning, but within the courthouse the air was no less charged, as if every intake was a burdening weight of the impending climax, and when the families entered this time, their fatigue was etched into every crease of their faces. Christine with pink-rimmed eyes but her jaw set high, Janelle tense but serene, Mary nearly ghost-like in silence, and Robin shuffling, her tears still wet, while Kody lagged behind his attorney, his suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, his face a picture of rage and fear, as if every step to the courtroom doors was another forward march to his own destruction. And the instant the judge appeared, the gallery fell silent, the tension seeping deep into the walls like nails on stone, because today held final testaments, revelations, and the unraveling of whatever was left of this broken family's bond. And everyone sensed the conclusion was nigh, though nobody sensed exactly how it would play out. The prosecution opened with a fierce determination, their tone harder now, their voice ringing with the power of evidence and the gravitas of truth, summoning Christine onto the stand, her feet steady though her hands shook, and as she lifted her hand to be sworn in again, the hush grew thicker, punctured only by the scratch of newsman pens eager to record each syllable. Christine's voice cracked initially, then leveled out, her words emotional but firm as she drew the last brushstrokes of deceit, recounting how Kody's years of favoritism drained her soul, how she stumbled upon hidden accounts that diverted funds away from her children, how laughter-filled nights turned into sleepless silences, and finally, how she found herself gazing at a man who no longer looked like the husband she believed she'd once known. Her gaze never left Kody as she spoke, her tears dropping but her voice intact, every word a chisel carving out the final shreds of illusion, and when she added, "I wasn't disposable. Undefined, none of us were disposable." "But that's precisely the way he treated us," the gallery shouted in shock, her voice cutting like a knife through the silence, Kody bracing himself in his chair, his fists clenched around the table, his eyes running frantically as if for an escape. The defense attempted to cross-examine, but Christine's words pierced each attempt, her conviction unwavering, her pain unshakable, until at last the attorneys surrendered, their frustration clearly etched upon their face. Janelle trailed behind, her testimony gentler but no less fatal, her voice shaking as she recalled the financial vows made and broken, the occasion she put trust in Kody with the future of their family only to discover that future drained off, her quiet resilience radiating through her sorrow, and when asked how she endured for so long, her response quieted the room. "Because I believed in the family, even when he stopped believing in us." The faces of the jury grew tight, their compassion evident, and Kody slumped even more, his defenses crumbling like a house of cards. Mary followed, and although she spoke in a low tone, her voice bore an unsettling quietness, the kind that haunts long after the words are spoken, as she spoke of years of emotional neglect, of pleading for shreds of love, of seeing herself disappear into nothing as Robin was given prominence, and when she uttered, "I wasn't his wife, I was his shadow," the courtroom came to a standstill, the hush so thick it was crushing, even the judge's face relaxing with the despair that lay packed within. The words. Kody shut his eyes, his hands over his face as if he couldn't stand to hear it, but the words fell nonetheless, each stripping off another layer of his facade until all that was left was the empty truth. Finally, the prosecution summoned Robin again, and the whole room leaned forward, holding its breath, expecting the final piece of this broken puzzle. And when she sat down, her tears started even before the first question was asked, her body shaking, her voice breaking as she tried to balance loyalty with truth. First, she parroted what she had initially stated. She believed in Kody, she trusted him, she felt protected. But the prosecution came at her harder, sharper, without letup. Robin, did you ever wonder if his protection cost them? Did you ever ask yourself why you were afforded more, why you were privileged, why their sacrifice sustained your safety? Her sobs escalated to a crescendo, her responses incoherent in shame and confusion, until at last, in the suffocating quiet of the jury's regard, she breathed the words that bound the truth. I wanted to believe I was special because he loved me. But deep down, I knew. I knew he was stealing from them to give to me. And I allowed him. The gallery exploded, gasps, whispers, cries of outrage, Christine hiding her face in her hands, Janelle glowering at the floor, Mary closing her eyes, tears streaming soundlessly, and Kody jumping to his feet, yelling, "No! She's a liar. They're taking her out of context. Robin, say you didn't know." But Robin couldn't look at him, her face in hands, her body shaking, the last thread of loyalty snapping under the crushing burden of guilt. The defense flailed, their voices shrill as they attempted to discredit the wives, to try and position them as bitter, hurt, pain-driven rather than truth-seeking, but it was often hollow against the wave of testimony and proof, and when the prosecution stood to deliver their closing of the day, their voice boomed like thunder. This is not merely a case of broken vows. It is a case of calculated betrayal, of manipulation, of a man who constructed his own throne upon the shoulders of women whom he vowed to protect and love. This is not a family disintegrating by default. This is a family deconstructed by design. The words hung there, thick, ultimate, irrefutable. Adjournment was called by the judge, her countenance grim, her voice authoritative as she reminded the jury of their responsibility to balance not only the facts but the intent and the hurt, and as the gavel came down, the courtroom seemed to breathe, tension shattering like glass, though its shards still sliced deep. Outside, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrust into faces, Christine offering no words, Janelle shaking her head, Mary walking quickly into the waiting car, her silence louder than any statement, and Robin collapsing into sobs on the courthouse steps, her cries echoing as the world watched. Kody, red-faced and furious, shouted into the chaos, "They're all lying! This is a witch hunt. You'll see, the truth will come out." But his words sounded hollow, lost in the roar of the crowd, drowned by the thunder of public judgment. As evening drew in, the courthouse stood dark against the storm-washed sky, the windows glowing softly with light, like watching eyes, and within those walls, the reverberations of hurt and betrayal hung in the air, refusing to dissipate, because this was not merely a trial for money or possessions or vows. It was a trial for love reduced to ashes, for trust broken into shards, for the very heart of a family exposed for the world to analyze. And though the verdict was still weeks away, the verdict itself seemed certain, the burden of proof too great, the betrayal too entrenched, the truth too recent. But still, even amidst the inevitability of collapse, the nagging question tormented all who had seen the trial through. The day that the verdict was finally delivered, would justice heal the wounds, or would it merely deepen them further, making the scars that could never be fully erased by any amount of time? The courthouse was hushed when Session 7 convened, an unsettling silence that pushed against the walls like the stillness before a tempest. And when the doors finally creaked open, the throng poured in, reporters gripping pens, cameras snapping, supporters whispering as if they knew today would see something unforgettable. And inside the courtroom the air was thick, a cocktail of hope and fear that wrapped around every heart like a vice, for this was the session where all would be revealed. Where secrets no one wished to confront would at last crawl into the light, and the family at the heart of it resembled more shattered remnants of what they had been than the sister wives the world believed they knew. Kody in first, his face ashen, his eyes red-rimmed, his shoulders hunched, all confidence drained from him but his jaw still tight, as if pride were the sole weapon he possessed, while Robin behind him, her tear-streaked cheeks, her stumbling feet, her glance in his direction only once before turning away, and across the aisle steel in her spine walking in Christine, though her eyes revealed the toll of sleepless nights, Janelle serene but her lips thrust forward as if holding in a deluge of Words and Mary, always quiet, always ghostly, in her seat with neither word nor breath, her very presence a heavy condemnation greater than any testimony. The judge came in, her gavel crashing like thunder, and the prosecutor did not delay, stating that today they would present the last witnesses and the evidence that would leave no doubt whatsoever, their voice firm but tense, as if they already knew the severity of what was to unfold. The first witness who testified was an investigator, a man who had spent months sifting through budgets, contracts, and secret accounts, and as he presented chart after chart, document after document, the gallery gasped at each disclosure. Secret withdrawals, homes transferred in private signatures, money moved under Robin's name in patterns too intentional to be explained away as coincidence, each one another brick in the wall closing in on Kody. The defense protested, argued, attempted to spin technicalities, but the judge ruled again and again, her patience thin, her eyes sharp and unflinching. Christine was unable to contain her tears as the investigator told her what she had long believed but never been able to prove. Janelle shook her head in muted shock. Mary closed her eyes tightly as if she couldn't stand to look, and Robin's crying sounded softly, her own sense of guilt growing with each document shown to her, while Kody's hands shook, his face a whirlwind of rage and despair, his mutterings to his lawyer frantic and incensed, his control disintegrating second by second. But the prosecution wasn't done yet. Out came a surprise witness, a young man whose arrival shocked the courtroom into stunned silence. One of Kody's older children, his face clenched with tension, his hands trembling as he took the oath, and the instant he opened his mouth to speak, the silence coalesced into raw electricity. His voice broke, but he continued. I used to watch my mom cry when Dad stayed out at night. I watched him prefer Robin's children, how money was always spent on them but never for us. I tried to think that he loved us the same, but he gulped hard, his eyes brimming with tears. But I saw the truth. He chose one family above all the others, and he left us in the dust. The courtroom snapped into silence, the words striking like a knife, Christine crying out openly, Janelle gritting her teeth as her tears fell, Mary covering her face, Robin sobbing louder than ever before, and Kody jumping out of his seat, his voice cracking in a panicked cry. That isn't true! Don't say that about me. I tried my best. The judge rapped her gavel, instructing him to take a seat, but the harm was done because the jury had witnessed it. The naked rift between father and child, the heartbreak which no denial could remove. The defense attempted to regain the reins, summoning Kody himself onto the stand in a final desperate throw, and as he raised his hand to take the oath, his face gaunt and exhausted, his voice trembled with the struggle to remain calm. I loved my family. I loved them all. I was trying to keep us together, to create something strong enough to survive. I might have been wrong, but I never intended to harm anyone. His attorney probed him gently, allowing him to position himself as the misunderstood man, a man who was overwhelmed by unattainable expectations, and for a moment it might have succeeded, except that cross-examination started. The prosecution's interrogations cut as sharp as ice. Mr. Undefined Brown, did you write this letter in your own hand? They produced the document shown earlier, the one on which he had noted these plans to one day be with only Robin, and his hesitation proved deadly. Undefined, I don't recall writing that, he stammered, his eyes shifting, his hollow voice, and the prosecutor persisted. Well then, it is also your handwriting, isn't it? Silence fell in the room, all eyes on him, and only at last his whisper, yes. Gasps rang out from the gallery, Robin's crying became a wail, and Christine's rage overflowed, her voice quivering as she cried out from her seat. You admit it then, Undefined, you admit you planned to throw us away, Undefined. The judge thumped his gavel for silence, but the truth had already cut through, unmistakable, irreversible. The rest of Kody's testimony unwound in a hurry, each attempt at justifying himself met with increasingly pointed questions, each excuse ringing hollow in the face of evidence and testimony, until at last he slumped in defeat, his words a confused tangle of rage, terror, and regret. The defense had rested, their strength spent, their argument in tatters, and the judge adjourned court briefly before final arguments, the courtroom filled with murmurs, reporters scurrying to get stories filed, the wives huddling in subdued knots, their sorrow weighing but their determination firmer than ever. When the trial resumed, the prosecution made their closing arguments with burning intensity, not only describing the fraud and betrayal, but of a family torn apart by selfishness, favoritism, and lies, their words ringing deep. This case is not about polygamy or marriage or personal beliefs. It is about betrayal. It is about trust broken beyond repair. It is about a man who chose one path for himself and left devastation in his wake. The defense responded with a trembly, urgent plea, asking the jury to view Kody as an imperfect man, not a monster, to consider the nuances of love and family, but their words were thin, frail, already swept under the tsunami of fact. The judge adjourned for the day, instructing the jury to begin their deliberations tomorrow, and the families filed out once more, the courthouse steps a frenzy of cameras and microphones, Christine's face streaked with tears but set with determination, Janelle walking steadily with her arm around her daughter, Mary silent as ever, and Robin collapsing into sobs as reporters shouted her name, while Kody stormed past, shouting over the noise, his voice raw. "You'll regret this! You'll all regret this!" But his words carried no weight now, no conviction, just the hollow echo of a man who had lost control of everything. And as the doors shut behind them, the world was holding its breath, sensing that tomorrow would see the verdict, and with it, the ultimate downfall of all that the sister wives pretended to be. The last day, Session 8, arrived with a gray sky full of clouds, as if the heavens themselves sensed the gravity of what was to be revealed, and the courthouse was ringed with masses of people, some of whom carried signs in favor of the wives, others placards bearing the name of Kody, and thousands more simply there to be a part of history in the making, while reporters yelled into cameras, their voices shaking with anticipation. Today, the jury will render the verdict in the case that has held the nation in suspense. Within, the air was stifling, the only sounds being the rustle of papers, the nervous clears of the throat, and the soft whispers of those who witnessed history-making. And when the families came in, the air was charged so thickly that it seemed to adhere to the skin like smoke. Christine entered first, her face white but resolute, her daughters at her side, their hands locked together in unity. Janelle came next, her eyes firm, but the lines of fatigue etched on her face showing how deeply this had taken its toll. Mary followed, aghast and inscrutable, as if bearing the burden of years too heavy to articulate, and Robin trailed in last, her tears already streaming down her face, her features marked by guilt and terror, hanging onto tissues as if they were her soul. Protection, and then Kody stood before them, his proud stature reduced to a shadow of what it once was, his eyes empty, his suit disheveled, his pace slow and reluctant like a man going to the gallows. The jury entered, 12 stone faces, their features inscrutable, their eyes forward, and the judge came in, her gavel bang once, the sound echoing like a faint drumbeat, and the room stood still in collective expectation. The clerk inquired of the jury if they had arrived at a verdict, and the foreman, a middle-aged woman with a calm voice, rose and responded, "We have." The silence was excruciating, each breath held, each heart racing as she unfolded the paper in her hand and began to read, her voice calm, measured, ruthless. "On the charge of fraudulent concealment, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kody Brown, guilty." A collective gasp ripped through the gallery, Christine's hand leaping to her mouth, Janelle closing her eyes as tears streamed down, Mary bowing her head, Robin crumbling into sobs, while Kody shook his head wildly, muttering, "No, no, no!" The foreman went on, her words like hammer blows. "On the charge of financial misconduct, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of breach of fiduciary duty, guilty. On the count of intentional emotional distress by coercion, guilty." The final word was barely uttered when the courtroom erupted into a state of chaos, correspondents scrambling to get copies in, onlookers whispering, and Kody's lawyer covering his face with his hands, while Kody himself rose, his face flushed with rage, his voice shaking as he bellowed, "This is a setup! They lied. They all lied. You're destroying my life." But once again the judge pounded her gavel and shouted again and again, "Order! Order in this court!" until the commotion died down. The judge addressed Kody, her tone icy but firm, "Mr. Brown, you have been convicted on all significant charges. Sentencing will be 30 days from today, but let me be plain. The court has recognized in you a man who valued pride over family, greed over trust, and deception over love, and today justice has been delivered." Kody crumpled into the chair, his frame shuddering, his head in hands, the picture of defeat open to all. Christine stood at that point, her voice shaking but resolute as she spoke to the reporters outside the rail. This is not about me or Janelle or Mary or even Robin. It's about every woman who has ever felt small, invisible, or discarded. Today we establish that truth prevails. Janelle also nodded, whispering, "Maybe we're not healed yet, but today marks the beginning of something new. Something for us, for our kids, for everyone who witnessed this happen." Mary didn't say a word, but her silence was heavy, her tears shining like diamonds as she turned and left, her head now held higher than it had been in years, while Robin held on to her chair, crying uncontrollably, whispering repeatedly, "I never wanted this, I never wanted this," her guilt a scream ringing through the room like a siren. Outside, the steps of the courthouse erupted into pandemonium, reporters descending, microphones jammed into faces, cameras catching every tear, every breath of relief, every venomous curse, and Christine stood firm, hands clasped around her daughters, announcing to the world, "We survived and we will go on," her words inciting applause and cheers from onlookers, while Janelle repeated the sentiment, voice quiet but resolute. Family isn't constructed upon lies, it's constructed upon love and we're reclaiming ours. Robin staggered out last, her face averted, pursued by reporters demanding, "Do you regret standing by him? Did you know?" Kody came out last, surrounded by officers, his wrists in cuffs, his face a tempest of fury and despair, screaming hoarsely, "This isn't over! I'll fight this! I'll fight all of you!" But his cries were ineffective, overpowered by the cries of the crowd. "Justice! Justice!" The cameras panned in, recording the moment that would be transmitted on every network, every site, a fallen patriarch, a shattered empire, a family broken but liberated from the tyranny of one man's hand. Cue back in chambers. The judge's office remained still, the jury having been sent out, their faces tired but relieved, having borne the weight of truth and brought it in without hesitation. That night, news outlets across the country ran the story, headlines blazing, "Kody Brown guilty, sister wives trial ends in stunning verdict," and social media erupted, hashtags trending worldwide, debates raging, some condemning, some defending, but most cheering for the wives who had finally found their voices. For Christine, the evening closed with her children sitting around her, tears streaming but smiles breaking through. For Janelle, silence peace, her phone ringing with words of encouragement. For Mary, aloneness, but aloneness no longer tainted with shame. And for Robin, the burden of decision she would have to bear for the rest of her life, torn between love and honesty, guilt and loyalty. And for Kody, a cold cell, a man by himself with nothing but the ringing of his own pride, reliving the moment that brought him here. And so, Session 8 ended not only the trial but a chapter in history with a legacy of lessons. That no family can live on lies, that no leader is beyond accountability, and that the truth, however painful, will always find a way to emerge. The last gavel had fallen, but the tale would live on, spoken in whispers and headlines, argued over in living rooms, and remembered in every heart that had ridden this drama from start to finish. For justice, once dealt, leaves a mark that cannot be erased, and the Brown family, broken as they were, would stand forever as testament that even the most twisted web eventually unravels under the light of truth.